I always will be. And I can see how people have developed that perception. I think the problem the party has had is we've lost the art of dialogue. We've lost the art to build relationships. And it seems to me that in the last Parliament that happened across a number of fronts, not just in respect to the Jewish community. And we must put that right. We must reach out. If we look back to the key moments, it was probably the parliamentary vote on the recognition of the state of Palestine. I'm not going to say anything other than I should say tonight, which is I voted for it. But two reflections. Number one, I don't think it was handled well. I don't think it should have been a whipped vote. And also I think the motion itself lacked balance. Labour needs to be always clear about the two-state solution. Every statement needs to see things from both sides and have balance built in to it. I don't think we managed that on that occasion. And I think we need to now reach out and we need to show that we are listening to people across the board, including in the community. It is clear that when we went into the last election, relationships were damaged. As leader of the Labour Party, I would make it my business to put those relationships right. And as a start of a 10, I can say tonight that the first foreign visit I would do as leader of the Labour Party would be to Israel, to show that message from the very start.
Thank you.
I've long been a supporter of a friend of Israel and was in fact in the brief period in which I was the shadow foreign secretary, it was very brief, was my first, I was going to say my only, that I managed to just briefly get to Paris before I got reshuffled while I was in Paris, which was to replace the trips to Paris with the trips to discuss the sort of border force at Croydon. Was not quite the same trip, but my first visit was to go to Jerusalem, was to go to Israel, was to go to Palestine, to be able to, because I thought it was the most important thing in terms of any foreign policy. It is hugely important that Labour continues to be a friend of Israel, that we never allow any dispute about decisions by the Israeli government to become in any way hostility to the state of Israel, to the Israeli people. And of course, look, we had a sister party in Israel who we wanted to win the election and they lost. And so, of course, there will be times when we will criticise, just as you will and just as many people will, the Israeli government and the Israeli Prime Minister, but we must be continuous and determined in our unshakable support for Israel's right to be safe and secure in the borders, and also for our support for a two-state solution, and to make sure as well that as we do so as part of supporting a peace process, we are also very alive to any time that the Middle East peace process goes awry, any time things go wrong, it can often be a cause of rising anti-Semitism in Britain. I think when that happened last summer, we were not fast enough to condemn it. We must also do so. It's why I have always worked so closely with the CST on issues around security and issues around anti-Semitism. We must do so, and it would be something that I would always seek to do as a part of the Labour Party.
First of all, thank you very much for hosting this event tonight and inviting us all here. I think it's a good question, a very important one. I think we have to reach out and have relationships with all sections of society in Israel and have an honest and open dialogue with them. It's not just with the Israeli Labour Party, but with many other parties as well. And we shouldn't judge everything to do with Israel through the prism of whatever Benjamin Netanyahu happens to be saying from one day to the other. There is a much wider political body than that. And secondly, any dialogue must be a fairly robust dialogue, because clearly, if there's to be peace and dialogue in the future, then it's got to start somewhere. I supported the recognition of the state of Palestine, and that went through in Parliament, as you know, on a non-binding resolution, as has gone through a number of parliaments in Europe and other parts of the world. And maybe that is a good way forward, that we can develop that. But there also has to be an honest dialogue about the situation in Gaza, the ongoing siege of Gaza, which of course provokes all sorts of bad things as a result of it. There also has to be an honest dialogue about the settlement policy all over the West Bank, which is now 500,000 people in West Bank settlements, which is not a good thing. There has to also be a dialogue about some of the issues of human rights within Israel, particularly the treatment of children and child prisoners. But if we want to have a long-term peace in the whole region, there's got to be a very wide dialogue. That means, to me, recognising the rights of Palestinian people as well as people in Israel to build a real relationship. There has been dialogue, there is some day-to-day dialogue, but it's got to go a lot further. It could be that the events of the past few days, where the deal appears to be in the offing with Iran on non-development of any weapons grade of uranium or plutonium, the enhanced inspection regime that's taking place in Iran does pave the way for a possibility of a much wider dialogue across the whole region. I was at the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty Conference in New York last month when the whole issue of a weapons of mass destruction free zone across the Middle East was discussed. It is a very huge issue, it's a very huge project. But if that can bring people together and end any danger of any other proliferation in the region, then that's surely a good thing. In my view, you make progress by understanding where people have come from, understanding why they take the views they do, but above all, trying to have a serious and honest dialogue with them. I've been on 9 visits to Israel, to the West Bank, and to Gaza, and I've had many discussions with many people, some of whom I agreed with, some of whom I didn't agree with, some of whom agreed with me, some of whom didn't. But at least there was that very good dialogue, and I think that has to be the right way forward before Jonathan pulls me down and stops me saying any more. Thank you very much.
Come back, but on this opening question, just to remind the audience of the question, historically, strong links between the Labour Party and Israel. How important is it to you those links are restored, and how would you do it? This Kendall.
Well, it's extremely important to me that those links are restored, and I know we have got a huge job to do to rebuild our relationship with the Jewish community, which is why I'm so glad this event is being held this evening and that so many of you are here today. I feel that kind of, the question asked about hostility, and I think that really did come to a crunch in the vote in the House of Commons on recognising the Palestinian state, and I don't think it was a 3-line whip. I've never broken a 3-line whip, but I did abstain because I didn't think it was the right thing to do. The way we achieve peace and a 2-state solution is through negotiation, not through passing resolutions in the House of Commons or the United Nations, and I don't believe we would have done that had we been in government, and I believe a responsible opposition that seeks to become the government should behave in the same way, particularly over such an important issue as this. I have and will always be a friend of Israel, and I think that there is more that we in the Labour Party need to do to speak out on the rise in anti-Semitism, not just in this country but across Europe, to speak out, I think, against the really, really worrying developments of boycotts and sanctions, which I am deeply concerned about. We have always been a party with strong links with Israel and our sister party there. We must listen, we must learn, we must build that strong relationship, and I hope together we can achieve our common goal, which is to get Labour back in government again, and we'll only do that when we act like a responsible opposition. Thank you.